Hello, I'm Natan Medina, and welcome to the second installment of the Black Mental Health Live, and this time we're unmuted. Tonight, we'll be shining a spotlight on the mental health experiences of young Black people, often ignored, overlooked, or drowned out from within wider society and the Black community itself. We'll be hearing from our four amazing young Black people, all with their own personal stories to share. So let's meet our guests. Ross, aka Raziah, a musician and rapper from Sheffield. He'll be talking about his lived experiences of mental health and systems to dealing with them. Zara is a student and African immigrant based in London. She is a Black rights and Black pride activist with a keen focus on the youth and mental health. Tariq is studying aerospace engineering at Sheffield Hallam University. Born in Nigeria, he grew up in Dagenham and is currently living in Manchester. Naomi is a young Black bisexual woman finding her place in the community and regularly confusing strangers with the power of their perception of her appearance. And introducing my co-host Ursula, who you may remember from our first Black Mental Health Live show. She shared her history of abuse and lived experience of mental health. She now runs her own survivor-led mental health and well-being organization, ADIRA. Ursula, how are you? And what type of feedback did you get from the first show?
I'm fine, Natan, as fine as I can be in the current climate. The feedback from the first show was absolutely amazing, completely overwhelming. People sharing their individual stories of abuse, of culture, of history, and also saying how to hear the other speakers talk about their stories and how it affected them and impacted them. And a few people actually said, your story saved my life, or hearing your story saved my life. So the first one was absolutely amazing, really overwhelming in terms of feedback. But this one, I had to make this one about my young people. They've been asking me for 2 years to do a conference that is just for them, with them, and by them. So that's why I decided to do this one. I let them pick the topic. And I let them pick the title as well, because I think it's so important in society that we hear from young people.
Thank you, Ursula. So tonight's four areas of discussions are young Black males, university and student life, the generation gap, and LGBTQ+, all of which overlap with the identity and discrimination of being young and Black. We have mixed things up a bit this time to allow for more audience questions and reflections during the live show. We want to hear from you. So if you have any questions for our speakers or guests, feel free to send them to us either by the website blackmentalhealth.live or tweet using the hashtag BMHLive. Or if you are watching on one of the social media channels, add your comments or questions to the chat box. Let's pick up on some of these challenges with our first guest. Let's see that video. Ross is a 22-year-old rapper and will be talking about his own experiences with mental health. He will talk about how mental health is viewed from his own perspective and his approach to dealing with the issues. Ross, hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine,
Ross.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Yes. Yeah, I can hear you perfectly clear. I understand you have struggled with your own mental health experiences. Do you want to tell us a bit about your own experiences?
Well, from being a kid in school and all these type of things, there was always certain issues, when it came to parents' evening, where you're discussing with the teacher, and those issues are looked at, but they're looked at as behavioural issues rather than there being something deeper. But as I got older, things started to progress, especially around, sixth form times. Things heated up quite a lot, and then ended up then going into the system things and trying to look at getting a counsellor, and that's basically the path I took on that.
So in terms of, because one of the things that I noticed about growing up as a young Black man and did you have mental health issues, or was it a case that you were told by school, by teachers that you have mental health issues?
At first, it was when looking at a problem or bringing a problem to teachers or a counsellor. Usually, they're quick to go to something like ADD or ADHD, which I hear from people in my community that is something with young black boys that they go to quite quickly, and that they medicate you, and it's actually a misdiagnosis in the end. I think I did actually watch something once on BBC where there was a Jamaican boy in England, and he was, not getting good grades, and they were saying he had ADD and all this stuff. He said he went back young. He went back to Jamaica.
I remember that.
And
yeah,
you remember seeing that? Yeah, you went back to Jamaica as a student. Yeah. So really, like, we got to consider the culture of it as well, like how it might just also be the way we are doesn't fit with how the system wants us to be or wants us to learn. I think most of us are quite kinesthetic with our learning. We want to move. I mean, generally speaking, I know that's why if they say you don't sit down, you might not sit down as much in another setting. You're allowed to move a bit and actually experience things. But when it got to a different age, I was getting older, then the diagnosis was depression when I actually went into, like, when it was like sixth form time. So before that, it was unsure. I think I never got the ADD thing when I actually had the proper counsellor, so I'm assuming they just threw that at me. I know I've got family members, etc., with ADD, and I know what it looks like. So I kind of knew it wasn't that, which kind of made me not trust the system, which is a whole other thing from younger thinking.
That's right.
How could you say that and prescribe something when it's actually a misdiagnosis? But yeah, then eventually I was diagnosed with severe depression in sixth form. But even at those times, I was skeptical again. And I think the problem is you go into the system or you go into a counseling session and they ask you, okay, like, what's wrong? They ask you about the negatives. And it's not always just about the negative. You feel what I'm saying? Like, you can have lows and you can have highs and you can have all sorts of different things when it comes to mental health. Even in the system, they look at it quite narrowly. So really, now they're only focusing on that half when really there was a whole other half that they were missing, in which there's
I think the
always
reason,
a
sorry to cut you, I think the reason why they focus on that, because I've heard so many black people say this, they'll go into counselling and it will be a white counsellor, and the first thing the counsellor will say is, oh, do you think you have problems or mental health issues because of the estate that you live on? They automatically assume that because you're black and you're, a young black man it must be because you live on a rough estate or because you come from a single parent family. You're almost judged before the counselling session even begins, simply based on the colour of your skin. So they saw you as a 16, 17-year-old young black man and assumed that you must be depressed. There was just no other diagnosis for it. Do you agree with that?
I mean, the counsellors I had, they might have had that in the back of their mind, but they never, I think maybe it was at a different time where they were quite conscious of that type of thing, possibly.
Yeah.
But they approached it, especially the last one I got. To be honest, I didn't like any of them. I had a few while I was waiting. And then my final one was actually he was a blessing in a sense when it came to that sort of sessions. He was quite understanding of the cultural differences. He would even, make it known rather than be the elephant in the room. It was a godsend. You hardly ever get that. So I was happy to get that. But yeah, in the end, I think it's unfortunate, but if you're not of the culture, you're always going to have a skewed view of what they're going through. I wouldn't try to counsel someone that wasn't of my culture because I'm not going to get everything. So the assumption might be that the way you're living or certain things that you're telling them about is a hardship when it might not be, or it's just the way it is, or you see what I'm saying?
That's right.
Yeah, there's just a lot of differences there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can you tell us about?
Sorry, go on, Natan.
I was just going to ask if you wanted to tell us about your transition in adulthood and what kind of hindsight you got from your experiences.
Definitely, when I look back, I can see with myself and my peers where we may have benefited from some help in that department from people in schools, in the community, just everywhere, looking at it as something that should be dealt with rather than just a problem or an issue. Yeah. Because then the problem becomes that transitions into adulthood. It doesn't go anywhere. And also, if the person feels like, I had like problems with things and people didn't care or people didn't notice, then that can also progress as you get older into, you start to rebel a little bit from people, and maybe that could account for some of the problems we have as young black men in the community. It's not everybody, of course, but there's a lot of problems that manifest themselves in a way that then people end up in terrible situations. But then you only look at they only look at it when it's happened, but they don't look at how someone can get to that point. Because we're coming from a place of coming up with these people and seeing how they were, how they actually are, but then seeing a whole new side grow because of all these things that were just overlooked, seen as issues and problems and just dashed away. I'm sure we've got quite a high exposure rate in our city of young black boys. We've got quite a high exposure rate. So they're just seeing these problems and they're dashing them away, and these are children. You know what I mean? So
you know what you were saying about
for myself. Oh, sorry. No.
You know, you were saying you reach a certain age and then the child starts to rebel or go off the rails, and then people want to start having a look. I have to say, because I always say this, I'm the first to rag white people when it comes to racism and bias and all this nonsense. But I'm also the first to say to our community, own your mess. Yeah? We can look and say, well, the school expelled him, or the school wasn't pushing him, or the university did this. But what about us as black people? What about us as parents? What are we doing? Because that child spends more time in the home. So are we noticing their behavior and ignoring it and just pushing the child to one side, be seen and not heard, don't bother me now, don't disturb me now. And when the child turns 18 and starts going off the rails, instead of us looking inward, we're pointing the finger outwards and saying, but it's society, oh, it's community, oh, it's the government, oh, it's the college, it's the university. Do you feel that us as parents, the village, the black community, do we need to start taking a bigger responsibility towards our young black men from a younger age, not wait until they're 18, 20?
100%, definitely. And you know what, the age that it needs to be focused on, or just really like, this, the age is getting younger, basically, is what I'm seeing. Like I feel like with everyone I see coming up, the 2000s babies and all this, like, and later on, even though it's close to my age, there's a big difference because of all the things that are going on in the world and everything that people are seeing, all sorts is going on. So the age is getting younger to where there's no going back, quote unquote, but there's never no going back. But obviously it's how people see it. It's like, okay, it's hard. It's harder to help you now at this point. But what I do see is people like to leave kids a little bit more than when I was growing up, at least, and before that. Is I see a lot of kids get left to their own devices with their phones and things and their and laptops. I'm saying like I don't do it myself, but I see it. It's quite extreme. Like I feel like I was just enough to know when I need to turn it off. Do you know what I mean? And it's like with the younger ones, I feel like it must have affected you madly, and I feel like we all have to come together as a community and really discuss what these things that are, even though we're in these places, the devices and things we're using are not of our community, and for the most part against our people. I mean, unfortunately, the phones we're using, all these things, where they get the minerals from and how they get them and all sorts, it's not. That's right. It's against us. It's extremely exactly, and it's one of those things where in the back of your mind, once you know that, you kind of feel like uncomfortable with everything that's going on. So it is important that we have a meeting amongst ourselves where we can then discuss where we're actually at with everything going on and what actually needs to be done. Because we can't use, by the time I'm having kids, I can't use the same parenting techniques that we used on even people with kids now. It's going to change loads.
Come in handy. The licks still work. So please carry that on, I beg. We've only got a few seconds left. And what would you say, obviously it's not a one size fits all, but what would you say as a young black man is the solution?
I think people just need to start listening more, especially within our own community, actually having an open ear to what a child has to say. As disrespectful as that might seem for some people, just have an open ear for the youth and that. And even the other way around, the elders. You need to hear about what the elders should open up if you feel to. Because you guys have seen it and done it,
Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, so Ross, we've got some questions coming in. So the first question I got is at Susan. At Ross, other than listening, what can families do better, especially parents, to ensure that we understand our male youths, please?
I think partially you have to remove what I'm assuming you have a judgment here, but you might not. But a lot of people do. Even myself, sometimes I do. We have a judgment that we get from the mainstream media and these things, and we feel like we can't approach something in a certain way. Sometimes I feel like if people approach me in the way I actually am, like I'm actually still your son, I'm actually still your brother. I'm still your mate from back in the day. I'm still just a man or a boy. If you approached it in that way, possibly we'd be like, oh, this, yes, I'll actually just talk about it. Because I actually noticed that the other way around, talking to the elders, is if I asked them and didn't assume that there was a block there, then we can actually have a conversation with people. But it is one of those things that the individual person is a different case. So you might have to find different ways around communicating. But generally speaking, I think that definitely would be a help, just generally.
Sure. And then we've got one more question. Thank you, Ross, for sharing your experience. What advice would you give to counsellors and therapists working with young black men or women?
I think as you're probably already trying to do this, but even deeper, you have to just rid any assumption, anything, any stereotype that you might have there. You might have to just get rid of it and then go, I'm gonna deal with this person, and I'm gonna deal with the problems as they are, and I'm gonna let them teach me the culture side, because it's easier like that. Because sometimes you try to jump the gun on the culture side and you end up messing up. Like I do it myself sometimes, and I've learned not to do it, because let me deal with the person in front of me and what they're telling me, and they're going to tell me where they're coming from and who they are. Do you know what I'm saying? About their community. Yeah. And you're actually learning at the same time. And then
exactly.
I think it should work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Russ. Thank you for opening up and telling us your story. And I believe that by sharing it, it will definitely help others. There are many aspects of a young black person's social identity that are interconnected with some of the mental health challenges that Ross just talked about. We've heard quite a lot over the last few months about students being stuck in halls of residence during lockdown and not having access to the right mental health support. Don't forget, if you have any questions for our speakers or guests, feel free to send them to us either by the website blackmentalhealth.live or tweet using the hashtag BMHLive. Or if you are watching on one of the social media channels, add your comments and questions to the chat box. Let's introduce our next guest. Play the video. Zara is a 21-year-old student and an African immigrant. Along with being a black rights and black pride activist, she has found a focus on the youth and mental health. She says through knowledge, acceptance and love of self, we can unmute a generation and create confident and powerful future leaders. Zara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for coming. Just wanted to ask you, as a student, how has the last 10 months been for you?
I think I can speak for all students when I say this 10 months is not what we anticipated. It's not what we dreamt of. It's not what we applied for. And of course, it's nobody's fault particularly, but it's just not it at all. For the last 10 months, we've barely received an education that we're paying a lot of money for. And not just that, of course, it's not anybody's fault that we've not received this education, but nobody's even talking about it. We've been ignored. The government is ignoring students as well. When I'm talking about students as a whole, we're being ignored. Yeah. We're being told to continue as usual, submitting these essays, submitting these assessments, do these exams with no guidance and no teaching. Not particularly the fault of the university, because the government's not trusting them either to communicate with them, but nobody's focusing on students at all. And black students are feeling the brunt of this a lot as well, because, you know, as you said, I'm an African immigrant. Do you know how long I've dreamt about university? Do you know how long I've worked towards getting to university? Do you know how long I took to make the decision of what I wanted to study and who I wanted to be? Because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I can only afford to do this once. And this is being taken away from me. Nobody's listening to us. Nobody's understanding the pressures that we might have at home. For a lot of black students, we've got parents who want us to be lawyers, to be doctors, to be accountants. We have parents, we need to vindicate their struggle. We need to vindicate why they came from Africa or the Caribbean. We need to prove to them that all of their sacrifices were worth it. And we are being let down. We're not being given an education that we are stressing over every single day, and nobody's listening.
Would you say that racism still exists within the universities today? And I asked that question because a couple of years ago, one of the students approached me and she said, oh, I love that you do this thing every month with a black women only support group. Can you come and do it at the university for our young black students? Because they feel lost and they've only got one counsellor and it's a white counsellor for the whole of the university. And I said, okay, but, speak to the university first, make sure they're okay with me coming. And obviously they would have to pay me for my time. And she got back to me and she said, oh, the university said, I'm sorry, we can't pay you to do that. We've got a counsellor here. Why do the black students need somebody else who is black? Can you see the problem with that? And is that still a problem in universities today in terms of racism?
Racism is well and truly alive in universities more than ever. What people don't understand is going to university is still a very elitist thing. To be able to afford to go to university, to take that time out of your adult working life, you have to be privileged. I am privileged to be able to go to university. But you must understand, not many people like me are making it there. I'm going and it's filled with very, very wealthy people from very different different background to myself. And these people are coming with a different life view to myself. These people feel like they can say the N-word and it's no problem at all because they're just vibing out to a song. These people feel like they can attack black faculty. So, for example, there's been issues with black security guards being attacked by all these Surrey and Berkshire boys because they feel like they can racially attack this black security guard because of where they think they are in life. Racism is so well and truly alive, but the difference is at university, you need to watch yourself. It's different because you're not at school. You can't go to the principal and tell them, oh, this person said this to me, this person said that to me, because you're dealing with bigger forces. You're dealing with people who have powerful parents, who have a lot more money than you and have a lot more time on their hands than you. You need to get your education, so you can't even focus. With counselling at universities, we need to have black counsellors for black students, not just because it's a race thing, but because it's an understanding thing. A white person is likely to have misconceptions. Like Ross said, you're more likely to have preconceptions about me. You're more likely to have all these stereotypes at the back of your head, and you're ready to give me advice based off your natural racial bias. I need a black counsellor as a black student, not because they're black, but because they're more likely to understand me, and it's just that simple. The only reason I survived secondary school was because I had a black counselor. And if everybody had a black counselor the way I did, I'm telling you right now, so many kids would be better off. But at universities, they have that one counselor. Do you know what I mean? They'll have the one counselor. It'll be most likely a well-meaning white person who will try their very best to get you through whatever you're doing, but they don't get it. And it's just that simple. They don't get it, and it's not their fault. It's about a world view. I feel like, Muslim kids, Asian kids, it'd be great to have a Muslim or Asian counselor. Black children, African Caribbean children, it'd be good to have a counselor that can understand you without you having to explain every tiny little cultural problem.
How many black faculties do you see at university?
Barely. I think I walked into a lecture theatre and I had one black seminar leader, and I was just staring at him like, ooh, look at that. I was just like, wow, bro, look at his ethnic name and everything. Do you know what I mean? From deep in Africa. And I was just so impressed. I remember just looking at him like, this is great. And then I thought, that is so sad. I was like, I'm at university. There's thousands of black students at university. We don't even see ourselves in that position of power. Because we see a black lecturer in an entire university. And it started making me think, am I going to be the one black lecturer in the university, or is someone else going to take my little spot? Do you know what I mean? Is someone going to take that spot because they let one in and that's it? It started to panic me that I was that excited to see one ethnic sounding person.
Yeah. How do you think that coronavirus, corona, has affected the mental health and mental well-being of black students and yourself?
Oh, have you got all day? Because I've only got
no.
Your time. Let us know. Tell us.
It's ripping apart. Of course, it's ripping apart everybody, but it's ripping apart the community so much. Black students are being demonized. Black people are being demonized in this pandemic. We're being seen as the ones bringing the disease. For what reason? For what reason? Black students are being. So I was at the train stop because I had to stay in university over the summer for many reasons to do with the pandemic. And I was at the train stop because I've been working through the pandemic because I need to keep working. And this old white man was saying to me, "It's your fault. The pandemic. Your people. It's your people's fault that the pandemic is still going. You're not following rules. You're not following restrictions. Look at you out." And I'm thinking, you're out too. You know what I mean? The difference is I'm coming back. I don't know what you're doing out. You know what I mean? But, a lot of black students have been telling me this. People are demonizing us. During the Black Lives Matter rally, yes, during the pandemic, many black students went out and rallied, and people jumped at the opportunity to demonize them. I personally didn't go out to protest for my own reasons. I didn't go out, but people made it their business to demonize black protesters. The minute a black person messes up this much, they jump on it. But nobody starts to think, why are they protesting? Because we're having a pandemic right now, but this pandemic will pass. Racial inequality is not going anywhere unless we tackle it at any time, at any point, by any means necessary. They didn't understand the urgency of the situation, that a man being shot in cold blood by authority, oh, you can leave that till after the pandemic. No, we cannot. We can't leave anything. They understand that we were so desperate to march that we marched during a pandemic. We risked our lives. As opposed to that being a no thing for them to understand, we were demonized for it again.
Yeah. I want you to go back and touch on the culture versus society thing. As you said, a lot of black parents want to have the privilege, especially in the African community. Oh, my child is a doctor. Oh, my child is a lawyer. Oh, my child is a dentist. And they're actively trying to outdo each other in who's got the better child. But what if your child wants to be a dancer? What if your child wants to be a violinist? What if your child wants to be a rapper or a footballer? It's a no, unless that child starts making money. Then all of a sudden, hey, my child is a footballer, because the child is now making money. So touch a bit on that, on society versus culture.
So I was also going to bring that in. You must understand mental health in black students can be very difficult because most of the black students I know should not be at university. By that, I mean it's not their aim. I'm studying accountancy. Do you want to study accounting? No, I don't really want to be an accountant, but my parents told me to. I'm studying law. Do you want to study law? No, but my parents told me to. So already you're at university studying something you have no interest in, dealing with white privilege and class privilege, dealing with being at the bottom of the barrel, for no reason. You're broken eating babies. You're thinking, for why? Do I even want to be here? No, because my parents are forcing me to be here. So already mental health is struggling. Your parents are calling you. Are you studying your books? Are you studying your books? You're already getting all this pressure from home. You're getting pressure from uni. To put it plain, it sucks. And you know what the worst part is? Let me just put this one point in. I was deeping the other day. I said, when I finish university, I'm going to apply for a big marketing firm in London. And I'm going to strut in there with all of my experience and all of my energy, and they're going to give me the job. And you know what? I realized something. I'm black. I actually just clocked that. Wait, I'm black. When I walk into these interviews, they're not going to see me for my energy, for my talent, for my experience. The first thing they're going to see is a black woman. And I have to go against all of these white people for these roles. And they're not going to see us for our merit. No matter what you tell me, no, they're not. I know people in the legal industry that have been turned away because they're black. I know people in most industries that have been turned away because they're black. And I realized I have to go into this world after university, and I don't know how I'm going to survive because I'm black.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds crazy, but I'm black. I have to deal that when I go for when I go for an interview, when I go to a company that I have every right to be there. And it's just frightening. It's very frightening. We have to deal with this mental pressure.
So much for sharing with us, Zara. I've just got some really good questions coming up. So first one, big up Zara for speaking up. Question to you. What proactive steps can students take to bring forward a Black Crown Counsellor, and what steps can be taken for students in halls?
We need to stop trying to be nice black people.
Yeah.
When we're in workplaces, when we're around a lot of people who are black, we're trying to be the good black, the non-violent black, the non-aggressive black. You need to say what you want, and you need to say it with your chest. If there is a problem, you email the head of your department, you email the head of your university, you email the president of whoever, and you get your voice heard. Don't try and be, I don't want to be seen as aggressive, I don't want to be seen as that. You need to be scared of wanting to eat. You need to stop being scared of wanting to eat at their table. And if worse comes to worse, you go and build your own. But stop trying to be nice. Just stop it. Say exactly what you're thinking at all times and let the other people deal with it.
Yes.
I've got another question. Laura, thanks for your honest account. Do you have any ideas of how services can reach young black people? Young black people aren't being reached by services, and I wonder how you think this could be improved.
Because services aren't being marketed to young black people, and it's just that simple. But as I was listening to that question, I was like, but what services? What services were being marketed to me? Nothing's being marketed to me. As soon as you start marketing to young black people that you're a safe organization or a safe spot that we can go to, believe me, we'll go to you. Just market it properly.
Yeah. And then we've got one more question. Do you think our African parents should adjust to different ways of parenting and recognize that certain ways of parenting can actually be toxic? How do you feel culture plays a role in this?
Most definitely. Of course, I feel like African parents should adjust, but you need to talk to your parents. It's not I'm standing up for African parents for being the way they are, but they come from a different culture to yourself. Do you know what I mean? And they didn't come and go to school and mix as much as you did to be able to grab the culture. They stayed at home and they raised you. They worked for you and they put all of their pennies into you. So the least you can do to them is at least talk to them. Have an honest conversation. Sit them down, mom. This and this and this. I love you and I appreciate you, but you're doing this to me. And I know you don't mean to, but I'm struggling here and I'm trying to make you proud, but you need to cut me some slack. All these kids who complain about their parents, how many of you have actually sat down and had an honest conversation with your parents? Drop the lies, drop to the seat, drop all of the going back and forth, talking to your friends first. How many of you have gone to your parents honestly and sat them down first? Not many. That is the first step. They might get angry. They might even kick you out. They might do anything, but you are their child and they love you. And eventually they will just have to listen. We've got, again, Black people, just speak up. Speak up, basically.
Speak up.
Unmute.
Thank you so much, Zara. You've been amazing for us and so much and keeping it unmuted. So this is the second installment from our series, our virtual live events looking at Black experiences of mental health. If you missed our first event, we explored Black mental health through 4 key themes of lived experiences, getting help, understanding your rights, and careers in mental health. The video is available to watch on blackmentalhealth.live website and has an accompanying report responding to the questions and key themes that came out of the discussions. As a reminder, here's a recap of the last show. Welcome to Black Mental Health Live. My name is Natan Medina, and I'll be your host for this evening. Over the next few hours or so, we'll be exploring mental health and the Black experience through 4 key themes: lived experience, getting help, understanding your rights, and careers in mental health. We'll be hearing from a range of people, from those who have had personal experiences of struggling with their mental health to people working in the healthcare system. With me in the studio are Adelaide Chimbanda, nurse consultant at Sheffield Health and Social Care, NHS Trust and trustee of local mental health charity Sheffield Flourish, and Ursula Myrie, managing director of ADIRA, a survivor-led organisation supporting Black people and their mental well-being.
My name's Amina. I'm 32, and I'm one of the founding members of ADIRA, along with Ursula and Marjorie. And I'm just a born and bred Yorkshire. Well, not born, but been in Sheffield since I was a year old, so I like to think I was born and bred here. I guess I would describe my mental health journey as waves.
You've been through a lot, obviously, with what you've been through. Would you be happy to share your story with us?
Yeah, I mean, I share my story at every opportunity because as painful as it is, and I'm very much aware of how painful my story is, I also have people who have come up to me and said, thank you for telling your story, because every time you tell your story, you tell my story. And I'm not at that place yet where I'm ready to tell my story. So you keep speaking, because every time you speak for me. I always tell people I wasn't born with mental health issues. Nobody is born with mental health issues. I have mental health issues because of trauma in my childhood, because of abuse in my childhood. I was born here in this country. I was sent to Jamaica when I was 2 to be raised by my sister's grandparents, where I suffered sexual abuse and rape at the hands of my sister's grandfather. I was beaten severely, verbally, mentally, emotionally, physically by her grandmother, because I wasn't their paternal or maternal, whatever the word is, grandchild, because we have different fathers. So it was when my mother came to Jamaica and saw how malnourished I was and how badly I was being treated, and there was obvious signs of sexual abuse and rape in a 6-year-old child that shouldn't have been there, and nobody was owning what had happened. So my mom saved up for a year and brought me from Jamaica to England. And as a 6-year-old, going
I'd like to welcome Sheila Mudadi Billings to the studio. Sheila is a black counsellor working in Sheffield, improving access to psychological therapies, otherwise known as IAPT, and mulberry practice working with asylum seekers and refugees. Welcome, Sheila.
Hi, Nathan. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
You're doing such a good job.
Isn't he though?
We've actually been watching you in the back room. And Ursula, thank you so much for what you've just shared.
Yeah.
What you've just shared must have touched a lot of people out there, because what you've disclosed and shared has gone to the heart of everybody.
Yeah, and it's
Thank
not
you
easy.
so much, and I'm hoping, you said you're a survivor. You're not just a survivor, you are thriving.
Yes, I am.
When all those things happened to you, you were a victim.
And of course, grief and loss is just one aspect of why people may struggle with their mental health. Our next guest is Peter Isabel, clinical psychologist at Sheffield Health and Social Care, who is joining us live from his home. Peter, hello. Oh, I don't think we have a mic on Peter.
I'm on mute. Hi.
Ah,
There you
now
go.
we can hear
Sorry.
you. How are you
Sorry.
today, Peter?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm good, thanks.
Here's the link to the Sheffield Mental Health Guide if you are looking for help with your mental health. Which just leaves me to thank all of our amazing guest speakers. You've all been amazing. Ursula, Adelaide, Syke, Peter, and Clive. Thank you all so much. And finally, thank you for your help in helping me host this whole
You're
event.
welcome.
And your valuable input has really been
Thank
so
you,
useful,
Nathan.
and it's going to reach an extended crowd beyond the barriers of our studio.
We hope so.
Yeah, we hope
Yes,
so as well.
absolutely, yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
hosting it. You did all right.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you guys for watching as well, for tuning in at home.
It seems like we really need to be thinking about and looking after our young people right now. Ursula, is there anything the older black generation could be doing to support our younger people better?
Yeah, accept change. That's the first thing we need to do as the older black generation. Accept change. We're very quick to, say to our young people, still, you should be seen and not heard. Or my favorite one in my house is, back in my day, I couldn't talk to my mother like that. And when I say that to my kids, they're like, Mom, we're not in your day anymore. And we joke about it, but it is true. We're not in, I can't, as Ross said, he doesn't want to raise his kids how he was raised. And I think it's a struggle for us as older adults, as older black people, to accept change. But we need to accept that. We need to accept that we were taught from the womb not to talk about issues within the black community. We don't do talking. We don't do touchy-feely. We say that's a white man's thing. But this new generation that's come up behind me, I'm 47. My kids are 21 and 23. This new generation, they're the talking generation. They're the generation that will ask you, Mommy, why did you hit me? Mommy, why did you call me stupid? That's not nice, Mommy. That's hurt my feelings. And we're like, what feeling? We need to stop all that. We've got to start building the bridge between the three communities and start talking to our young people and listening to them and accepting as older black people that times are changing and we need to change with it. Otherwise, we're going to lose another generation.
Exactly, I agree. Thank you so much, Ursula. Let's bring on our next guest, Rhoda VT. Our next guest, Tariq, feels there is a generation gap within the black community. This generation gap is having an impact on young people's mental health. Tariq is currently studying aerospace engineering at Sheffield Hallam University. Thanks for joining us, Tariq. What do you think are some of the differences? Hi, Tariq, can you hear us?
Yeah, of course. Hiya.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So what do you think are some of the key differences between the generations that are contributing to poor mental health for our young people?
I feel like the key difference is pretty simple. We're just facing different challenges. The generation before us didn't face this new thing we call social media. One thing I realized that with social media, there's a lot of different challenges that parents simply just do not understand at all.
Yeah.
And also, one thing I like to say is that we just have a different mentality towards mental health. Obviously, especially in 2020, mental health is getting spoken about a lot. But like Ursula said before, mental health problems has been something that's been an issue for a long time, especially in the black community. However, this generation previously, like through no fault of their own, they just had a lot to do. If that makes sense, it's just taboo to speak about mental health. Because where I'm from in Nigeria, if you say mental health, they just think you're crazy. And I feel like that's the main differences when it comes to our generation and this generation.
So, like, what about? Oh, sorry. Do you want to say something else, Al?
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, we were talking earlier about the fact that we, especially when it comes to our boys and our young men, we tell them to toughen up. But we tell both the girls and the boys to toughen up, because we're very quick as elders to talk about, well, when I was your age, I was in World War 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I was fighting this, and I came over on the ship and wind rushed this, and we had to be strong, and we expect our children to be the same. But the message then is that it doesn't work for this generation. It's not helpful to tell you guys when you come and say, Mum, I'm struggling, Dad, I'm struggling, and we tell you toughen up.
Exactly. And I feel like the previous generation think we're generally weak because we just go through completely different challenges. Our challenges is online. For example, if we're getting bullied online, like the older generation would just say, close your laptop, like off your phone. But it's never really that simple. No. There's a lot of things we go through online. There's a lot of little different intricate things, and it's a different attack. If that makes it's a different form of mental attack, and you have to lead us in profession.
Right. So, like, do you feel like times have changed a lot then, like, from our old generation to a younger generation, and like and the way that we value like what affects our mental health is different compared to how it used to be?
Of course, it's changed. Like, it's even changed for even for me. My sister is 5 years younger than me, and then when she like says her issues, I'm like, really? But like it's like you have to like take a step back and see that different and like we're in a generation where things are changing very, very, very quickly, and it's definitely down to the previous generation to be like, okay, I just don't understand this. Let me take a step back and see what's actually going on.
And like, how do you feel that your mental health has been affected with the whole generational gap in terms of how you deal with like social media and the pressures that you felt on you between the previous generation?
Yeah. One thing that how I felt is when it comes to social media, I don't really have a social media presence like that anyway. Thank God, because I don't know how I would deal with it. But like my little sister does, and one thing that I encourage my sister is to always focus on building in real life. Social media like is not real. Does that make sense? However, like it is challenging for her because the companies literally design social media to get us addicted to it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's
it does.
And that's exactly. And like thinking about something different. Yeah. Like one thing I realized in African homes, especially first generation African homes, is that there's a weird soldier mentality of keep going.
Yes.
And that can take a toll on someone. Like it is not it. Yeah.
And like,
I love
do you think that
Sorry, Nathan. I was going to say, I can't let that pass. I love that word that you used, soldier, because that's what we expect in the African Caribbean community. Our kids to soldier on no matter what. I remember watching a episode of Criminal Minds, and this somebody was going around killing, and the police came to this black man's house, and they suspected his son. And they were speaking to his son, and his son seemed a bit, down and depressed. And they said to the dad, "Do you think your son is depressed?" And he said, "Listen, I wake him up at 6 a.m. to work, and he doesn't go to bed till 10 o'clock at night. He doesn't have time to be depressed, right? Because I make sure that he spends his time, and that's the older generation's mentality of, if my child says they're depressed or says they're down, I just go to work. Just fix this, you'll be fine. Just do this, you'll be fine. Just get on, just keep going. As you said, just keep soldiering and you will be fine." But they don't think about the impact that has on a young person's mental health.
Yeah, and the way that it can take its toll on different people.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like with that, I feel like because like the older generation has actually worked so hard for our generation. And we're grateful for that, but there's a sense of you have it all. Like, what do you have to be depressed about? Like, you have food, you have shelter, you have all this. Like, what exactly do you actually have to be depressed about? But like I said from my previous comment, it's just generally different challenges. There's always many different things that. Like,
what do you think could be the possible solutions then to bridge this gap?
All right. I feel like the possible solution is that we have to meet each other 50-50 from the old generation and our generation. From the older generation, they need to understand that there's times where you have to just listen and not lecture. There's times where you just do not understand what you just cannot fix everything, and you just have to listen and let the person vent. For the younger generation, it's about understanding that they've probably gone through 80% of what we've gone through, and they've come up from the other side. And if we just sat down and just listened to them and kind of remove emotion from I just listen to them from an objective place and just try to understand them, then there'll be a lot of issues that you thought you couldn't fix, but you can fix, if that makes sense. Because they were a black young person before.
Yeah, they were young as well. I can relate to that because so as you were saying.
Oh yes. So one last point is that as like black people, young black people, we need to understand that our mental health today is important. And there's some things that we can't change in the system. And one thing I will urge us to do is to be more proactive with our mental health. Is to go to things like this, speak to somebody, find a safe space. And that's how I'd say.
Yeah, like I was just going to agree with you on that point about the communication, because like even for me, with my mum, one of the things that really strengthened my relationship was the fact that we started to communicate and we started to have a two-way conversation where I could talk and vent about the things I was going through, and she was listening and she was advising me rather than just lecturing me. It was like a two-way conversation, and that just gave me the grounding and the leveling to kind of process a lot of things and to move forward. And it made me feel safer because then I felt like I could approach her and speak to her about different things. So definitely agree with that. Did you want to add something as well, Ursula?
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of the generation gap, let's not forget our elders. I got my kids are in their 20s, and there's me at 47. And then you've got, our mothers who are 60s and 70s and 80s. And when we mention that, the older kids will be like, no, leave the old ones. We don't, because they can't change. They're too stuck in their ways. Let's leave them where they are. But you have to remember that you, as my son, for example, Tariq, if you're coming to me and saying, "Mommy, I don't like how you talk to me, it really upsets me or it really offends me," but I'm still being spoken to like a dog by my 80-year-old mother. So while you're trying to change me as your mum, there's no point me saying, "Well, let me leave her," because she's still abusing me. So I still have to go and teach her, or you as her grandson has to go and say, "You know what, Grandma, it's really not good that you talk to Mum like that, because when you abuse her like that, she abuses me like that," rather than saying, "No, Grandma's too old, she ain't going to change, she's set in her ways." Do you accept that it needs to be the
Ursula,
three generations?
Sorry to cut you off because of time, Ursula. I just want to thank you, Tariq.
Sorry.
We just got to keep the show moving. Thank you for your contribution. Without further delay, let's introduce our final guest. Let's play the VT.
Naomi is a bisexual woman who has had to navigate her own identity within the Black community and regularly confusing strangers with the power of their perception of her appearance. Welcome, Naomi. Please, can you tell us all about your... Hello. Yeah, tell us about your experiences, please.
Sure. Well, I've got a few. Some funny, some sad come to mind. I'll start with the sads, get to the funny. That way we can, up the ante as things go. But anyways, two sads. One time I was on my way back from Morrison's, just picking up lady supplies. I did look a tiny bit eccentric, but I guess I usually do. Anyways, a man stops me to ask, "Oh, are you on your way back from a gay club?" And I'm like, "No, I just look like this." He's like, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were homosexual." Now, I found this funny, so I went home to tell my sister and brothers about this interaction I just had. And as soon as I get back and start explaining this to my sister and brothers, my little brother asks, "Oh, what does homosexual mean?" So I'm about to explain to him, but before I even open my mouth, my sister's like, "Can you not talk about that stuff, please? I don't want them thinking it's normal." So in that moment, bear in mind, I haven't come out to my family. They don't have the sort of... They don't hate gay people or whatever. They're not actively homophobic. They're just of a cultural and spiritual mindset that it's a sin to be gay, and we're good Christian people, so their daughter wouldn't be a sinner. So they make jokes like, "Naomi, if you dress like that, people are going to think you're a lesbian." And I laugh like, will they now? They don't know that I'm bi. Like, my even being here talking about this is a risk to my anonymity, but I'm a 25-year-old grown woman. At this point, if they find out, it is what it is, Like, I'm lucky that I can confidently say this stuff, but not everybody can. It's not safe for everybody to be their authentic selves. But yeah, I digress. So I'm trying to explain this to my brothers, and my sister cuts me off to say, "Don't talk about that. I don't want them thinking it's normal." So in that very moment, I have to swallow any hopes or like dreams of letting my family know that I also like girls, because it clearly wouldn't be accepted. It's not okay. They don't want to think that's normal. So automatically, I'm not normal. I have to shut a piece of myself away. And when that happened, I was much younger, so I didn't deep it like that. I just sort of accepted that, okay, I can't bring this part of myself to the table. Fine. There was a time where I was at a Christmas party, and I was seeing a little girl at the time, and my ex-girlfriend's big sister asked about my family. Because naturally, if I'm meeting my ex-girlfriend's sister, she presumes that my family know about my girlfriend, but they didn't for the reason I just gave. And when I told the big sister, she was like, "Oh, that's so sad." But I didn't think it was sad at the time. It was just my normal, because it is my experience. It was only after I got home that I was like, you know what? That kind of is sad, because my family don't get to know all of me. I mean, I know, like, naturally, we always we slice ourselves up and give different slices to different audiences, because that's just how social cohesion works. But to have to slice yourself up and only be able to give a few of the slices to your family, who should love you unconditionally, that it does hurt, frankly. So yeah, there are mental health things that come up just of my being a bit queer. But yeah, I'm quite fortunate that I have a family of friends here in Sheffield. Like, everyone in Sheffield pretty much knows I'm bi, but that's not something that can be brought back home, because frankly, it would just open a can of worms I don't yet know how to navigate. I don't like worms. But yeah, a funny experience. There's another time.
This is the first time you've come out publicly as being a Black bisexual woman. And we've had this conversation before about having to live your life as two minorities. One, you're Black, and you're bisexual. How has that affected your mental health over the years? Because you're now 25. You've never come out before publicly as a Black bisexual woman. How has it affected your mental health, having to exist as two minorities and having to be something to your family and something else outside?
It's made me very good at compartmentalization, I'd say, which I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Probably isn't either of those things. It just is, But yeah, as far as being two minorities at a time, it's interesting that you say it that way because it's like being black is already a minority. We are a minoritized group. There are lots and lots of black people, so I won't say it is a minority. But yeah, we're black, so that's already a minoritized group. Then to be bisexual or trans, if I was, or, you know, non-binary, blah, 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 that is like a minority within a minority. It is a subsection of a subsection of society. So, and when you sign forms and they've got the equal opportunities section, it's like white British, white Irish, white other, black African, black Caribbean, black British. It's never the first option. I'm not saying that black being the first option would eradicate all mental health qualms or whatever, all inequality qualms. However, just the way that that is structured already shows you in a non-explicit way that we are a subsection of a subsection. And it's not something you think about consciously. It's just something you take in. It's not nice. I talk a lot about oppression, I realize, but that's important because as black people, we are an oppressed community. So we need to make more time to like step back and look at ourselves critically and look at all of ourselves, not just the parts that are palatable, not just the heteronormative parts that we can bring home to our families and whatnot. Because if we cannot critically look at all of ourselves, we can't really address big issues that we'd like to overcome. So I think it's a bit, what's the word? It's counterintuitive to talk about Black Lives Matter, blah, 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 without acknowledging that all Black lives matter, not just the ones that are palatable to, you know, my mum or your mum or like somebody with low name, perhaps.
Like, why do we maintain a culture of silence that is harmful to individuals in the community? Why do you think we do that?
Because it's easier. I think we do that because, frankly, it's easier doing the hard work of trying to point the finger at the dogma that suppresses us instead of just each other. That requires big thinking. It requires probably reading a bunch of books. It requires going out, speaking to more people than you'd naturally come into contact with. It requires real open dialogue. And a lot of us can't be asked. I'm glad I'm invited to this webinar because it's an opportunity for me to actually think about these things because, you know, I have to now talk about them. But yeah, it's not that they weren't already on my mind. Like, it's just easier to not address these things, so we don't. But it's high time that we've stopped taking the easy path because the path of least resistance isn't the path that was designed for us as it stands. So we need to carve our own, and so we have to knock down the bullshit in the way.
Can we look at ourselves and as a community critically, and accept that we can't accept each other's differences? Can we look at each other within ourselves, within our community, and accept that we can't accept each other's differences? Is that the way to kind of perceive things?
I mean, there's always going to be people who will agree to disagree. Like, I'm not going to be able to convince certain people of my worldview simply because it is my worldview. I don't expect them to all succumb to my views. They don't expect me to succumb to their views. Like, people are different. But that doesn't mean there isn't room to acknowledge and still respect each other despite these differences. Like, I can be talking to a conservative, white, fascist, lady-hating misogynist about bread types. We might like the exact same bread. I still don't have to agree with anything he says, but I have to respect that he is a human being with opinions, and likewise he should respect that I'm a human being with opinions and a right to equal treatment, frankly, even though it doesn't seem that way.
What would you say is the solution then, in terms of, as a black community, coming to terms with that LGBT is a part of, LGBT black youth or black people in general are still a part of the community and shouldn't be shunned by the church, by the community, by the triangle, as I call them. What would you say is the solution to make life easier for LGBT black people in our community? Obviously, you won't have a one-size-fits-all answer, but...
Well, I think one thing that would make it easier would be it's difficult. It's difficult because personally, like, obviously, my family don't know that I'm bi. I can't say I've explicitly made that effort, but I do think it would be easier for the older generation, the homophobic parts of us, to accept us. If there was just more exposure, like, these days, if you see like a Smirnoff bottle with a rainbow flag on it, some people be like, oh, the gay agenda's trying to take over. But no, I think the more you see something, the more you think it's normal. So the more we just speak and authentically, like if you're gay, I mean, you don't have to scream it off the rooftops, but you should be able to at least like drop it into conversation, or, you know, drop the fact that your partner is a lady, or male if you're male, into conversation without it being looked at oddly. And the only time it's not going to be looked at oddly is when it's been heard so many times that it's old news. We need to make ourselves old news, basically, because queer people are old news. We've been around for ages. It's just, it's not palatable to most. It's not palatable to society as it stands, at least the way I see it. And the only way it will be more palatable is if we just shove it down the throats. So yeah, all the people who are still in the closet, I love you. You're seen, perhaps not by your family, but, you know, a big hug for all the queer people in secret.
I've just got some really good questions coming through. The first one is, what barriers have you faced, if any, from professional and from Black and ethnic minorities group in particular in regarding to your sexuality, please?
Barriers I faced in regards to my sexuality. I haven't faced many physical barriers is the wrong word. I haven't faced many terribly obtrusive barriers. However, I have noticed like shifts in demeanor around me. Like I'm quite sensitive to body language, other people's emotions, blah, blah, blah. And there have been times where at work, for example, I've just mentioned that, you know, I'm bisexual, like, and I've noticed as their body language sort of like contorts, and they don't say anything, but they distance themselves from me. And I can tell that like, oh, whoops, I've let that cat out the bag. Now their opinion of me is like warped forever, and they're not as comfortable to just come speak to me as they were before. And like, they might not mean it in a bad way, but it hurts, you know, like I feel that. I know you didn't intend to set out and hurt me, but the discomfort with me just being my comfortable self, it's like, you can't please everybody, so don't try.
Yeah. We've got a few good comments. We've got one that says, congratulations on being your real authentic self. Then we've got, wow, you are strong and brave to do this. And they do not know. Yes, you. And then finally, hey, Naomi, good to see your nuggets. Proud of you. Question. What is the most productive way of having a dialogue with non-POC about issues that affect you?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I missed the last part of it.
Yeah. What is the most productive way of having a dialogue with non-POC about issues that affect you? I'm not sure what they meant by non-POC. I'm guessing people that just
people of color. So the most productive way of having a conversation with people who aren't of color. The most productive way would probably be to say something like, you don't get where I'm coming from. You cannot get where I'm coming from. So don't, just because you've heard me, just because you heard me, just because you've been around people of color does not mean you suddenly have our worldview. You do not have the internalized however many years of oppression that your parents put on you, that you put on your other friends of color by accident. So as well-meaning as you may be, please just listen, because you don't get it. You will try, and we appreciate that, but you can't get it without being in it. So yeah, please just do your very best to listen. That's the most productive way I can put it. Shut up and listen.
Love it.
Very, very eloquently put. We're just seeing if you've got any more questions. Let's see what else we've got. What's your best piece of advice for people in a similar situation to yourself?
My best piece of advice would be to really think about who your family are and make sure you don't put yourself in harm's way trying to be an authentic version of yourself. Because, yeah, I do think that for our own mental health sake, like, we need to be seen. We need all of us to be seen. However, for your physical safety's sake, for your emotional safety's sake also, if your parents, for example, knowing that you're gay or bi or trans or non-binary or agender or whatever would cause problems, then you have to think very carefully about opening that can of worms. it is good, to be honest, but, you know, it's everything in its place is what I'd say. Like, be you, but be you safely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Naomi. You've been amazing with sharing everything you've just said. There have been some really key points discussed that make me feel that important change has to happen within our own community, as well as within the wider systems of society. We do have some time left to respond to your questions, and we have our speakers along with Ursula ready to respond to any further questions or reflections from the audience. Remember, send your questions through the question function on the website or tweet us with the hashtag BMHLive. Okay, so we've got a question for Ursula. When are Black mental health groups going to start working together and form a national network of user-led groups?
When hell freezes over. I don't know what it is with our community, why we struggle to work together. We try so many times and it fails. And I think it's a case of every time we get together, it's too many chiefs, not enough cooks. Too many people want to be the chief cook and nobody wants to be the bottle washer. Too many people want to be the organ grinder and nobody wants to be the monkey. You know, it's the same thing over and over. We need to start just come together and accept, okay, this is your opinion, this is my opinion. I do this bit, you do your bit, I stay in my lane, you stay in your lane, because it can be done. We've seen so many other communities that come together and build the most amazing things, and whether it's buildings or, you know, shops, and it can be done with us, but we need to get this mentality of I'm better than you, you're better than me, I've got a degree, you haven't, I've got a PhD, you haven't, so I should be the one in charge. You know, it's little nonsense like that, and we hold grudges for England, Ireland and Scotland and Wales combined in the Black community. We don't let things go. Something somebody did 15 years ago, we still want to be bringing it when we're trying to work together. You know, learn to let things go, learn to move on from what happened in the past. And the past, what we have to remember is the past isn't 20 years ago. The past isn't 30 years ago. The past is 5 minutes ago. Whatever it was 5 minutes ago, let it go. And let's start working together in a really meaningful way. It can be done, but lose the attitude, lose the chip, lose the degree, lose the PhD. Just come as your authentic self. You bring what you can bring to the table. I bring what I can bring to the table, and we make it work.
Yeah, thank you so much. We've got another question for Tariq from @PhilipJonas. Do young Black men feel more at ease talking about mental health? Us older guys in our 40s and 50s don't talk about it when we are in a group. Sorry, Tariq, could you just repeat that one more time? We just, your mic, we couldn't hear you. We can hear you now.
Can you hear me now? All right, perfect.
Yeah.
One thing about our generation is that I'm very grateful for is that we're able to speak out. We're able to come away from the toxic masculinity and say that this is our problem. Let me talk about it so I can solve it. I feel like the previous generation, it was very much you're the guy, like you're meant to be the bedrock, you cannot say anything. And I feel like what the previous generation need to do is just need to understand that speaking out about your problems is still masculine, and you need to understand that it's okay to speak about your problems. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. And we've got another one for Naomi from @Sequa. White therapists also want to work with Black people. How can we create spaces to find ways to work together?
Ooh, I think the spaces to work together already exist. What we need to create is the understanding of culture, which will only happen through more speaking, really. So I'm not Black therapists, white therapists, all therapists should be able to treat all people. It's just that previous.
Oh, we've lost Naomi there.
Hi, Naomi. I think we've lost you. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. The recording of this event will be available. Oh, do we have Naomi back?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so we've lost Naomi, but we just want to thank you all for joining us tonight. The recording of this event will be available for people to access on the website and across social media. Please do follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BMH Live UK for information about our next event. If you would like us to consider your future themes as topic for discussion, then please do get in touch. If you are seeking support for your mental health, then ADIRA have put together a directory of Black therapists. Please visit adira.org.uk/speak-to-someone. You can also visit the Sheffield Mental Health Guide. The web address is on the screen now. This is a searchable directory of all the mental health activities and support in Sheffield, including a section on services operating during COVID-19, which just leaves me to thank all of our guest speakers and Ursula. Thank you so much for your help in hosting and your valuable input. Stay safe and good night.